The courtroom felt unusually heavy that morning, the kind of silence that presses on your chest and refuses to let go.
You are a fool.
It wasn't the standard hush before Judge Judy entered. This was different. People weren't just quiet, they were tense, uneasy, sensing that something about today's case wasn't just unusual. It was personal. At the plaintiff's table sat Emily Turner, only 14 years old. Her small hands were clenched tightly in her lap, shoulders hunched, as if she could fold herself into nothingness and disappear. Beside her, Sarah Turner, her mother, shifted anxiously in her chair. Her eyes darted between Emily and the parking officer on the other side of the room, disbelief etched into every line of her exhausted face. The woman looked like someone who had been carrying the weight of the world for far too long, and tonight, that weight had grown heavier. Across the courtroom, Officer Daniel Price lounged with his usual self-assured arrogance. Arms crossed, chin high, he seemed unconcerned, almost smug, as if the room itself existed to validate him. But anyone who had read the case file knew better. They knew the truth hiding beneath that smirk. Price wasn't just enforcing the law. He was enacting revenge. Years ago, Sarah Turner had been his neighbor. Young, determined, and principled. She had reported Price to the landlord for harassing other residents in their apartment building. It was a small complaint, nothing criminal, but for Daniel Price, it was a scar he had never forgotten. He had carried it like a grudge, patiently waiting for an opportunity. And now, standing in front of Judge Judy, he saw his chance. The courtroom door clicked open. Judge Judy entered with a familiar, unyielding presence that could make anyone falter. Each step she took seemed to thicken the tension in the room. Her gaze swept the courtroom with laser precision before resting on Officer Price. That smirk? Gone. She could see immediately that something was off. Though the officer clearly thought he had hidden his motive well, Judy didn't open her folder immediately. She let her eyes rest on Emily, on Sarah, and then finally on Officer Price. Her voice, when it came, was deceptively gentle. "State your name." "Emily Turner," the girl whispered, her voice barely audible. "How old are you, Emily?" 14, she said, and the word hung in the air like an accusation. Judge Judy repeated it, slow, sharp. 14. She turned her eyes to Price, a slight narrowing of the brow, the kind that could slice through any pretense. The room seemed to hold its breath. "Mrs. Turner, why are you here today?" Sarah's voice quavered but remained strong. "Your Honor, my daughter was issued a parking ticket while sitting in the car. She wasn't driving, she wasn't doing anything illegal. And this officer," her eyes flicked to Price, "chose her as a target." A murmur rippled across the audience. "Targeted?" Judge Judy's tone sharpened, leaning in slightly. "Explain." Sarah swallowed. "Years ago, Officer Price and I were neighbors. I reported him for harassing other residents. He never forgot, and now he's punishing my daughter for something I did years ago." The courtroom went still. Even Price's confident posture faltered. A tiny flicker of fear crossed his face, one he quickly tried to mask. Judge Judy didn't comment immediately. She turned to Emily. "And you were just following your mother's instructions?" "Yes, Your Honor," Emily whispered. "I stayed in the car while she ran inside. The doors were locked. I didn't touch anything. I didn't even move the car." Judy's eyes swept the room, absorbing every detail. Then, slowly, she opened her folder, flipping through the stack of documents. She paused on the citation, her lips pressed together, eyes flicking to Officer Price. "A 14-year-old child," she murmured. "And you wrote this citation as if she were a willful adult." Price tried to speak. I followed protocol, Your Honor." Judy leaned forward, elbows on the bench, hands clasped. "Protocol doesn't include personal vendettas, Officer Price. Yet somehow, here we are." The air in the courtroom thickened. Every viewer in the room could feel the tension building like a coiled spring ready to snap. Sarah squeezed Emily's hand, the girl's knuckles whitening. Judge Judy turned back to Price. "Explain to me why you would issue a citation to a child." "Explain it clearly." Price hesitated, caught between the urge to lie and the undeniable weight of truth already pressing down on him. It was standard procedure. Standard procedure? Judy's voice rose. Let me be very clear. You targeted a minor because of a grudge that has nothing to do with law enforcement. You let personal resentment dictate your actions. Is that what you're saying? The officer opened his mouth to deny it, then closed it. The room seemed to tighten around him. Judy glanced at Sarah and Emily. You didn't do anything wrong. Your daughter was following instructions, obeying the law, and was targeted for something completely out of her control. And yet, here she sits in my courtroom because someone decided revenge was more important than decency. The courtroom shivered, the tension palpable. Even the audience knew this case was no ordinary ticket dispute. This was about justice. Real justice. And Judge Judy was already assembling the pieces in her mind. She flipped through more documents, past complaints, prior citations, reports where Price had shown a pattern of vindictive behavior. Every file told a story of someone abusing authority to settle personal scores. And this, Judy said, tapping the stack in front of her, is why we cannot allow personal grudges to masquerade as law enforcement. Officer Price, a child is not your pawn. A minor is not your target. And a grudge from 10 years ago does not justify terrorizing a family today. Price shifted in his seat. For the first time, the confident mask of arrogance cracked. Sweat began to form at his temples. Emily, small and fragile in her seat, looked up at Judge Judy for the first time. There was hope in her eyes, a fragile, trembling hope, but hope nonetheless, and Judy wasn't finished. This case, she continued, voice calm but icy, isn't about a parking ticket. It's about judgment. It's about the difference between right and wrong. And it's about teaching people that revenge is not a weapon, nor is it a shield. You will answer for your actions, Officer Price, and you will understand that a grudge has no place in justice. The room held its breath. Even the cameras seemed to pause, waiting for the storm that was about to hit Price's carefully constructed world. And outside the courtroom, unbeknownst to Price, Judge Judy's team had already begun pulling additional records, emails, past complaints, and incident reports that would make this vendetta undeniable. The tension wasn't just dramatic flair. It was a slow, relentless build toward exposing the truth. And for Emily Turner, 14 years old, this was the beginning of a fight she didn't ask for, but would ultimately survive. Asterisk, the courtroom felt smaller now, the tension almost tangible. Every eye was fixed on Officer Price, who had finally realized that his past grudge was about to consume him in front of the entire room. Judge Judy's gaze was relentless, sharp enough to cut through lies, arrogance, and fear in a single glance. Officer Price, she began, her voice deceptively calm, I want the full story. Every detail. Not the sanitized version you wrote in your reports, not the version your quota-driven mindset allows you to see. The real story. From the beginning. Price swallowed hard, trying to maintain composure. His shoulders stiffened as if bracing for impact. I don't understand, Your Honor. It was a routine citation. Judy's eyes narrowed. Routine? You're here because you let a grudge dictate your actions. Let's rewind. Do you remember Sarah Turner? A flicker of recognition crossed his face, and then a subtle twinge of guilt, or perhaps fear. He hesitated. Yes, Your Honor, he said cautiously. Sarah Turner was your neighbor years ago, correct? Judy pressed. Yes. He admitted, voice tight. And you resent her because she reported your harassment in the apartment complex? She continued, letting each word land like a hammer on his conscience. Price stiffened. His jaw tightened. It wasn't personal at that time. Oh, it wasn't personal, Judy repeated, slow and deliberate. Yet here you are, using your badge to punish her daughter. You issued a citation to a child because you never got over a complaint from years ago. Is that correct? The courtroom fell into a hushed silence. The audacity, the brazenness of it was shocking. People in the gallery exchanged uneasy glances. Price opened his mouth to deny it, then closed it. The truth hung between them like a storm cloud. Asterisk, Judge Judy leaned back slightly, tapping her fingers against the bench. Let's look at the pattern, shall we? She flipped through a set of documents her team had compiled: past complaints, prior citations, and officer reports. Each one told a story of abuse disguised as law enforcement. Women, children, elderly citizens, anyone who couldn't fight back had become targets for Price's vindictive impulses. "Here," she said, holding up a sheet of paper. "Complaint number 212B. A disabled woman unloading groceries received a $300 citation. Your notes?" Failure to comply. Yet she presented a disability placard. "You ignored it." Price swallowed. His smug demeanor faltered. And here, Judy continued, voice rising slightly. "Complaint number 198C. A pregnant woman pulled over due to dizziness. You issued a citation while she waited for an ambulance. Why?" "It was protocol, Your Honor." He's TMMERED. "Protocol doesn't excuse cruelty," Judy said sharply. "It doesn't excuse using your position to settle personal scores." Emily shifted in her seat. Her small hands gripped the edge of the table. She felt a mix of fear and righteous anger. Finally, someone in authority was seeing the truth she had known for weeks. She hadn't done anything wrong. Judge Judy turned toward Emily, her tone softening. "Emily, I want you to tell me exactly what happened that day." Emily took a deep breath. "I was sitting in the car. My mom told me to wait. The doors were locked. I didn't touch anything. Nothing at all. And then he gave me a ticket." A murmur passed through the courtroom. The incredulity in her voice was palpable. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand. "It's not your fault, Emily," she whispered. "No, it's not," Judge Judy said firmly. "A child does not deserve to be punished for an adult's vendetta. And you, Officer Price, made a conscious choice to do exactly that." Price's jaw tightened. Sweat began forming at his temples. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, the first signs of real fear creeping in. Judy leaned forward, eyes fixed on him. "Officer Price, you targeted Emily not because of law, not because of any rule, but because of a personal grudge against her mother. Is that correct?" Price opened his mouth to deny it. Then, seeing the stack of documents and the unwavering stare of Judge Judy, he faltered. I don't know what to say." "Say the truth," Judy commanded. "Because if you lie, I will make sure the world knows exactly what you've done." Price's shoulders slumped. "Yes, it was personal. I never forgave her for reporting me back then. And when I saw an opportunity, I took it." The courtroom gasped. Some of the audience covered their mouths. The camera zoomed in on Emily, her eyes wide, disbelief and anger mixing in her small face. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed. "And this, sir, is exactly why we have laws and limits. Personal vendettas have no place in law enforcement. You chose to abuse your authority, and you will answer for it." Judy's team had gathered more than just complaints. They had emails between Price and his colleagues, showing subtle boasts about getting back at the Turner family. There were also surveillance photos from the parking lot, showing Price observing Emily and her mother as if waiting for a perfect moment to strike. "Do you see this?" Judy asked, tapping the photos. "You watched a child sitting in a locked car, waiting for her mother, and still issued a citation. You used fear as a weapon. You weaponized a minor. Do you understand what you've done?" Price looked down, silence finally breaking his facade. Emily spoke softly, her voice shaking but strong. "I didn't do anything wrong. I was just doing what my mom told me." "Yes, Emily," Judge Judy said, her voice soft but firm. "And you will not be blamed for his bitterness." The audience was tense, some leaning forward, others shaking their heads. It was rare to see the full weight of personal vendetta exposed so clearly in a courtroom. Every whispered conversation, every exchanged glance, told the same story. Price had crossed a line, and justice was about to hold him accountable. Sarah whispered to Emily, "We're going to be okay now. She sees the truth." Emily nodded, tears threatening but unspilled. For the first time, she felt seen, understood, and validated. Judge Judy looked back at Price, her voice icy. "You have not only issued a false citation, you have broken the public trust. And I will make sure the proper authorities review your actions immediately." Price's face paled, the weight of exposure finally settling in. Asterisk, the courtroom air had grown thick, almost suffocating. Every person present felt the tension pressing down, a pressure that seemed to thrum with every heartbeat. Officer Daniel. Price sat rigid, sweating under the piercing gaze of Judge Judy. Emily Turner clutched her mother's hand, small fingers trembling but determined, and Sarah's jaw was tight, controlled, but the anger simmering beneath the surface was visible to anyone paying attention. Judge Judy leaned forward over the bench, her eyes fixed on Price. "Mr. Price," she began, her voice low and deliberate, "you admit that your actions today were influenced not by law, not by procedure, not by the need to uphold justice, but by a personal vendetta against this woman." She pointed toward Sarah. "Correct." Price's throat tightened. "Yes, Your Honor, I held a grudge. I shouldn't have." Judy's hand lifted, cutting him off mid-sentence. "You shouldn't have? Shouldn't have?" Her voice sharpened, echoing in the silent courtroom. "You didn't just make a mistake, Officer Price. You weaponized a minor child because you were bitter. That is not protocol. That is not law. That is cruelty masquerading as authority." A murmur ran through the audience. Some gasped audibly, others leaned forward, gripping the edges of their seats. Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but there was a flicker of hope in them now, a fragile, glowing ember of justice finally turning in her favor. Asterisk, Judge Judy tapped her gavel lightly. "Bailiff, bring the files." A stack of folders arrived, and she opened one with deliberate slowness. Inside were shredded pages, notes, previous complaints, and records that Price had tried to destroy in an attempt to hide his personal agenda. "Officer Price," she said, her voice calm but deadly, "these documents were shredded because you didn't want anyone to know the truth. And yet, here they are. You cannot hide what you've done. Do you understand that?" Price shifted uncomfortably, his confident facade cracking further. I didn't think. You didn't think." Judy repeated. "You didn't think. Before punishing a child for something she didn't do. You didn't think before using a minor to settle a score. You didn't think before destroying evidence. Those are not mistakes, they are conscious decisions with real consequences." Emily leaned forward slightly, her small frame tense. She wanted to speak but didn't. She trusted Judge Judy to voice what she could not. Asterisk, Judge Judy picked up a photograph from the folder, placing it carefully on the bench. It showed a younger Price in the apartment complex where he had once lived, standing angrily outside a neighbor's door. And there, unmistakable, was Sarah Turner, pointing him out to the landlord, reporting his harassment. "This is what started your grudge, isn't it?" Judy asked, eyes narrowing. "Years ago, a complaint against you. A minor inconvenience at the time. And yet, you let it fester in your mind until you saw an opportunity to retaliate against her daughter?" Price's jaw tightened. His face reddened. "Yes, I didn't want to admit it. But I remembered." Judy tapped the photograph. "Remembered? Do you understand the consequences of remembering a grudge and acting on it? That child sitting in the car, following her mother's instructions, became a pawn in your revenge." "A pawn? And for what? Your wounded pride?" Price's eyes flickered toward Emily, who met his gaze for the first time with a mixture of fear and defiance. She didn't flinch. "You underestimated them?" Judy said, nodding slowly. "You underestimated this child, you underestimated the mother, and you underestimated the law. And now every action you took will be examined under a microscope." Asterisk, the audience shifted, some whispering, others openly gasping at the unfolding drama. Reporters scribbled notes furiously. Even the cameramen seemed to hold their breath as Judge Judy began pulling out more evidence. Emails between Price and his colleagues, subtly boasting about teaching the Turner family a lesson. Internal notes highlighting his personal vendetta, and records of multiple complaints that had been ignored or hidden. Sarah's face hardened. She had been carrying this weight for years, the injustice, the stress, the fear for her daughter. Now she felt vindicated, her anger tempered by the knowledge that the truth would finally be seen. Emily looked up at her mother, then at Judge Judy. Her voice was soft but firm. "I didn't do anything wrong. I stayed in the car. I was just following instructions." "Yes, Emily," Judy said, leaning toward her with a gentle tone. And that is why this case is not about you. It's about the consequences of someone abusing their power. You did everything right. You were brave and you trusted the truth to prevail, and that courage matters. The audience seemed to lean in collectively, the tension thick as the story of revenge and misuse of authority unfolded before their eyes. Asterisk Judy turned her gaze back to Price. Do you understand now, officer, that your actions have caused a child to experience fear, stress, and humiliation? That your need for revenge has put a family at risk financially, emotionally, and socially? Price swallowed. His lips trembled. I didn't think it would. I didn't know. You didn't think? Judy's voice cut like a blade. There is no excuse for targeting a child. There is no excuse for revenge disguised as law enforcement. And there is no forgiveness for the fear you inflicted. Sarah leaned forward. She was just a child. How could you do this to her? Price could only look down, ashamed, unable to meet her gaze. Judy's voice softened slightly but remained firm. Sarah, you and your daughter endured this because of someone else's bitterness. That stops now. And it stops here today. Asterisk Judge Judy began reviewing the remaining evidence. Emails, internal memos, and previous unresolved complaints. Each piece reinforced the narrative. Price had let a personal grudge dictate his professional conduct, and his pattern of behavior showed it was intentional, repeated, and malicious. Emily sat up straighter, her small frame suddenly imbued with strength she hadn't known she possessed. Sarah's hand rested firmly on her daughter's shoulder. Together, they were ready for the final confrontation, the moment when justice would speak loud and clear. Judge Judy closed the folder slowly, letting the sound echo through the courtroom. Officer Price, she said, her voice cutting through the room, you've been exposed. Every act of vengeance, every decision made out of spite, has been laid bare. You will face the consequences of your actions, and the child you targeted will have her life and her name restored. Price's face went pale, the full weight of the courtroom and Judge Judy's scrutiny settling on him. The smirk, the confidence, the arrogance all gone. Only fear remained. Asterisk, the courtroom was dead silent. Every eye was fixed on Judge Judy. The tension, thick and suffocating for hours, had reached a breaking point. Officer Daniel Price sat slumped in his chair, the confident mask of arrogance completely shattered. Emily Turner, small and fragile in appearance but strong in spirit, clutched her mother's hand. Sarah's face was a mixture of relief, anger, and anticipation. The final reckoning was about to unfold. Judge Judy lifted her folder, letting the quiet stretch a moment longer. Then, with a single deliberate motion, she placed it on the bench and leaned forward. Officer Price, she began, her voice low but authoritative. Today, you have been exposed. Every action, every note, every deliberate decision to punish a child for the sake of revenge has been laid bare. And it will not go unaddressed. The officer swallowed hard, trying to regain some semblance of control. Your Honor, You will not speak, Judge Judy interrupted sharply. Not yet. You had your chance to think before acting. You had your chance to exercise judgment instead of vengeance. And you failed spectacularly. Asterisk Judge Judy paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the courtroom. Then her voice rang clear and precise. Emily Turner, she said, turning to the young girl, you are 14 years old. You have done nothing wrong. You were following your mother's instructions. You were sitting in a locked car. And yet, because of someone else's bitterness, you were dragged into a situation no child should ever face. Today, I want you to hear this loud and clear. This was not your fault. Emily blinked back tears, a mixture of relief and disbelief flooding her small frame. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand tightly. Thank you, Your Honor, she whispered, barely audible. Judge Judy nodded once, her expression softening momentarily. Then she turned back to Officer Price. Her gaze was icy, unyielding. Officer Price, you abused your authority. You targeted a minor. You allowed a personal grudge to dictate your actions as a law enforcement officer. And you falsified documents in an attempt to cover it up. Therefore, this court finds the following. She paused, letting the words hit. The courtroom was silent, the audience holding its collective breath. The citation issued to Emily Turner is void. All associated fees are void. Furthermore, I am forwarding the details of your conduct, along with all supporting documentation, to Internal Affairs for a full investigation and disciplinary action. Price's face went pale. Your Honor, please. No, Judy cut sharply. No, please, no excuses. You chose power over fairness. You chose intimidation over duty. And you chose a 14-year-old girl as your target. Actions have consequences. You will face them. Asterisk, the courtroom erupted in whispers. Sarah pulled Emily close, wrapping her arms around her trembling daughter. Emily buried her face in her mother's shoulder, crying openly for the first time since the ordeal began. Judge Judy's voice softened as she addressed them. Emily, you did nothing wrong. You were brave, obedient, and honest. And you will never be blamed for the actions of someone else's bitterness. Do you understand me? Yes, Your Honor, Emily whispered, her voice muffled by tears. Good, Judy said firmly. Remember this moment. This is what justice looks like when the truth is followed. And you, Officer Price, will have to live with the consequences of your grudge. Not just today, but every day moving forward, knowing that a child suffered because of your bitterness. The audience, usually quiet and restrained until the cameras cut, began to rise instinctively. Applause echoed through the room, not for Judge Judy, not for herself, but for Emily Turner, a child who had endured fear and injustice, and for Sarah Turner, a mother who never stopped fighting for her daughter. Asterisk, Officer Price's smirk was gone, replaced by a hollow defeat. The exposure of his personal vendetta, combined with the evidence of falsified documents, ensured that his career as a parking enforcement officer would not survive. Internal Affairs would take over, and the city would review every citation he had ever issued. Judge Judy leaned back, calm and composed, a stark contrast to the storm she had unleashed. She had done her duty, not with theatrics, not with vengeance, but with precision and unwavering focus. She had protected those who could not protect themselves. Sarah whispered to Emily, still hugging her tightly, "It's over, baby." "It's finally over?" Emily looked up, tears still in her eyes, but a smile beginning to emerge. "We won, Mom?" "Yes," Sarah said, her own tears falling. "We did." Asterisk, Judge Judy's voice cut through the room one final time. This case is a reminder to everyone. Personal grudges have no place in law enforcement, and authority is a responsibility, not a weapon. Children, the vulnerable, and the innocent must always be protected. And when someone abuses their power, justice must be swift, decisive, and absolute. The gavel struck. Bang. The sound echoed through the courtroom, final and resounding. Case dismissed. The audience erupted in applause. Cameras captured Emily and Sarah leaving the courtroom, holding hands, a mother and daughter reunited in relief and justice. And Officer Price? He sat frozen, fully aware that his career, reputation, and sense of integrity had crumbled. Judge Judy did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply sat back, the calm certainty of a woman who had done what she was put on this earth to do. Protect those who could not. Protect themselves, and for Emily Turner, that certainty became a lesson she would carry for the rest of her life, even in the face of fear, injustice, and bitterness. Truth and courage could triumph. Asterisk, Officer Price targets a 14-year-old girl out of a long-held grudge against her mother. Judge Judy uncovers years of personal vendetta and misconduct. The courtroom experiences intense suspense, emotional highs and lows, and shocking evidence. Justice is served, citation voided, fees canceled, officer exposed, mother and daughter vindicated. Powerful moral lesson about authority, revenge, and protecting the vulnerable.